Okay, so this is going to be a short video about Jacqueline Caldwell's policies, the policies of Jacqueline Caldwell, who is running for the Kentucky Court of Appeals judge. So there's 14 Court of Appeals judges. She's trying to be one of them. And the way that it works, she explains the process is that the cases are generally argued by attorneys. Well, if you're a citizen, can you appeal a case? I'd like to think so. So she's actually been very good at explaining how the process works and how, what the appeals judge is all about. She's even got some criticisms for the Court of Appeals in Kentucky today. Okay, so the process is there's a trial court, right? The district court or the circuit court, there's some sort of trial, and then that trial, if there was some sort of error, then the attorneys will write legal briefs, and then those legal briefs go to a 3-judge panel of randomly selected appeals judges. So there's 14 appeals judges, but these 3-judge panels are the ones that approve of appeals or disapprove of appeals, and they're randomly selected, which means that the case and the judge assignment don't have anything to do with the district from which they're elected. So that's good and bad. So the specific district that Jacqueline Caldwell is running for includes these counties: Adair County, Bell County, Casey County, Clinton County, Clay, Cumberland, Estill, Garrard, Girard, Greene, Jackson, Knox, Laurel, Lee, Leslie, Lincoln, Marion, McCreary, Metcalfe, Monroe, Nelson, Pulaski, Rockcastle, Russell, Taylor, Washington, Wayne, and Whitley County. And it looks like it's essentially southeast Kentucky. If you went from, straight from the tippy top, because Kentucky is like, so you just go straight down that south part. So not the western, south part, but just really south central counties. So again, I'll read them again: Adair, Bell, Casey, Clinton, Clay, Cumberland, Estill, Girard, Greene, Jackson, Knox, Laurel, Lee, Leslie, Lincoln, Marion, McCreary, Metcalfe, Monroe, Nelson, Pulaski, Rockcastle, Russell, Taylor, Washington, Wayne, and Whitley. Those are the counties that will be voting for between Jacqueline Caldwell and Michael O. Caperton. Those are the 2 choices that are going to be presented to the voters of Kentucky for those 27 counties for the appeals court judge. And so, if you're in those counties, pay attention. Pay attention to what I'm about to say and try to read up and ask both of these candidates questions while they're answering your questions. When they are in a position of power, they'll have, a caseload and they'll have to work, and they're more honest. They're more honest when they're a candidate versus when they are actually sitting, up on high. So, cases, let's see, so she explains she has a little biography too, and there's some comments I want to make. But ultimately, I'm very impressed with Jacqueline Caldwell. She says she represents poor folks, and she has represented poor folks, and that she is also very much against abuse. So she's been a victim of domestic abuse, so she knows what it feels like to be terrorized, and I like both of those things a lot, okay? So the policies, this is all that matters, and I've been able to just sort of generate a list of 4 here. But that's okay, it's a start. Now, I think the first 2 is just the facts of, Kentucky law. So in order to, you can't just say, hey, the trial court made the wrong decision, you need to review this decision and come up with a different opinion. You have to say that the trial court made an error in the way that they had presented the case. And then that error had, substantially affected the trial court's decision. So the 2 things that you can appeal for, she says, is in clearly erroneous finding of facts. So if you have an erroneous finding of facts, somehow the finding of facts was incorrect, that's something that you can appeal. No, they said this is what happened, but really this is what happened. So if there's an erroneous finding of facts, or if there's the abuse of the trial court's discretion, those are the only 2 things that she keeps mentioning that could be appealed. So again, an erroneous finding of facts and the abuse of the trial court's discretion. So remember those 2 things: the abuse of a trial court's discretion. So the judge in that outfit used discretion, and he abused his discretion or her discretion because they didn't provide you with a lawyer. And that's one of the 2 areas that she points out as being appealable. She says it has to be specific cases. So these are policies, okay? So if you live in those 27 counties, And if you're poor, but the judge doesn't allow you to have an attorney, that can be appealed. That should be appealed. What the hell? You have a right to an attorney. You know, a person knows when they're poor and when they're not. And when it comes to lawyer fees, $1,000 just to talk for an hour, the lawyer fees are astronomical. So when a person is poor, but they're not allowed to have a court-appointed attorney, that is an error that Jacqueline Caldwell said that she would most likely would overturn the trial court's decision. Now, there's two parts to it. You have to have an error, right? You have to have an error in court, either an error of facts or an error with the abuse of the trial court's discretion, so they didn't, use civil procedure right, or they weren't actually being fair. So it has to be an error, and then that error has to substantially impact the court's decision. So the other example she used is hearsay. So if hearsay had been introduced into the trial, that by itself isn't enough to be appealed. But if hearsay was introduced into the trial that had affected the trial's, the whole trial, the decision of the trial court, then you can appeal that. So just having hearsay introduced isn't enough. It has to be hearsay that went ahead and had a significant impact on the trial court's decision. So, that's, you can use your own examples, but essentially if somebody comes in and they say, hey, that person is a thief and a liar, and people believe them, and that impacted the court's decision, you can appeal that case. So the two criticisms that Jacqueline Caldwell says for the Kentucky Court of Appeals today is they take way too long to form an opinion. Which, how long does it take to form an opinion? My God, I form an opinion almost immediately, and then, with more facts, maybe I might change my mind, but ultimately, it takes no thought, it takes no effort to form an opinion. It takes no thought to form an opinion. So that's one. So she says that the one problem with the Court of Appeals is that they take way too long to make an opinion, and the other one is they don't have any family law experience. So you have all these family courts, which are draconian, and they worry me because I'm not for sure if you have the same freedoms that you do in, regular court, district court, circuit court that you do in family court. It's essentially just, a dictator, and they just, dictate things of a family nature. And if they've been abusing their kids, well, hell, they're going to, defend the abusers and then let the victims continue to get abused. They may even, call the victim a criminal. So I think having family law experience, which she has, would be a good thing. And then to hurry up and make an opinion. It doesn't take long to, make an opinion. If you look at the court case and then, figure out the facts, make an opinion and hurry up and give it back to him, because she's saying that justice delayed is justice denied, which is, I think, an MLK quote. So that's really good. I like that for both of those things, that she's, criticizing the Court of Appeals in Kentucky. So she's saying there's some problems with the Court of Appeals in Kentucky. And then she's also explaining where her policies lie. So as an appeals court judge, if there's, an error in facts, or if there's the abuse of a trial court's discretion, she'll appeal the case. And then she also says that if you're not given an attorney, even though you're poor, well, that's something you can appeal to. And then she also says when hearsay has been introduced into the trial that had a significant impact on the trial court's decision, that's appealable also. So those are her policy positions, and those are important policy positions, and you should consider all these. Hopefully both Michael Caperton and Jacqueline Caldwell continue to talk about what errors would have to be made in a trial court. I would also like to hear what errors would be made in a trial court that they would appeal. I would also like to hear I'd like to hear that they, will represent regular citizens. So she's saying that generally cases are argued by attorneys through written legal briefs. Well, it is not beyond a citizen to write their own legal brief. Here's the understanding of the law, here's some quoting of the law, and then here's my reasons why I think it should be appealed. That should be taken just as serious as an attorney. Unfortunately, with the lawyered class, they're part of their own club, and if you're a regular citizen, then you're not given the same due deference that a lawyer would be given. So I want to hear them say that, they'll accept appeals written by citizens, and I want to hear all the, errors of a trial court that they would find appealable. Maybe even use, specific cases. Well, this case right here is a public case. This was, correctly appealed. This case right here was not correctly appealed. So this is the conversation that, hopefully will get started. Now, there's two little concerns that I have. She essentially isn't, perfectly like me. She's very coquettish, too. All her pictures are just like, But that, she was the youngest of 15 children, so she, was the favorite of everybody, right? She's the youngest, so we all had to protect the youngest. And of 15 kids, that's a big fat family there. Is she Catholic? She's a Christian. I don't know if she's Catholic, but usually Catholics have big families. She said she started working at Druther's restaurant. So she's humble. So Jacqueline Caldwell said she worked at Druther's restaurant. I don't know if she was cooking or waiting tables or what, but that's very humble. Then she gets a factory job, and she's a sewing machine operator. I think they used to call that textiles. You were working at a textile factory at Fruit of the Loom. She was also a forklift driver. So she's got some, nappy roots. She was a Poe folk. She was, maybe not Poe, but I don't know. She's been around farmers and working class people, so I think that's very good. You should always, how can you stay true to yourself? Well, I keep going back to these poor people, and I keep talking to them, and they talk to me about this and that. So that's how you stay, keep yourself from getting corrupt. You actually go to a poor person that, maybe wasn't even a part of your case, and you're just talking to them about, their experiences with Kentucky courts. And you actually listen to them, and you hear them out. And, so she's a prosecutor. I wish she had more defendant experience because you need both sides. I feel like the most heinous criminals out here, because I believe in the law, the most heinous criminals out here deserve the best damned attorney ever. If they're going to get life or maybe even death, they need a really good attorney that's going to go to bat for them. So for, a month or two, you're going to be the pariah of the community, but your job is to give them the best defense that they deserve. And it's not the heinous criminals. Everybody deserves the best defense that they could deserve. So, a lot of these public pretenders, they are overworked, and they're underpaid, so they get all these cases, and so they hurry up and make a plea deal, so they're not really your lawyer at all. So as a prosecutor, I don't think she would understand, the problems of public pretenders and whether or not you get one or don't get one as much. She's a prosecutor, so she's been throwing people in jail. She was an assistant prosecutor. She's also done, private family law too, so I'm sure she's had to defend her. But to be a defendant just means you have to defend anybody and everybody that's accused of a crime. I really like night court. Night court was amazing. They had, a row of folks, and both of the lawyers were up to, date with their cases, and they would be before the judge, and then the prosecutor, the defendant, they would say this, and they would say that, and the judge would make their determination. That's exactly how a court should work, and the judge should not just try to convict anybody that's in front of them, but really listen to, both sides and see, make a good decision. So, and then she talks about fighting the opioid problem, which she also talks about not being a legislator from the bench. This is why I think these conversations are important. So she says the same things that a lot of judge candidates say, where they say, well, I'm just going to be fair, and I'm going to interpret the law fairly, and I'm just going to do my best. And, that's all good and fine, but you are a person, and you do have opinions, and you do think about the world in a very specific way. So, I wouldn't mind, I don't know. It'd be nice to hear them that they side with the oppressed. I like the oppressed. I side with the oppressed and the forgotten. I'm like Jesus, so I'm there for, the lepers and the tax collectors and the people that have been left behind. So her being a prosecutor, is that's fine. She's seen that, side of the law, but has she really seen the defendant side of the law? And then also her fighting, she points out the opioid abuse. I think the war on drugs has been lost, and the only thing that we can do is reduce the harm. So what can we do to reduce the harm? People aren't just, abusing drugs because they, just want to abuse themselves, but they come from bad circumstances, and people can abuse all sorts of things, not just Oxycontin, but, tobacco, liquor, and so there's other drugs out there. And then also there's elderly folks and people that are actually in pain that need opioids. So her mentioning opioids, I'm sure that might come up, but that feels more political to me, and it makes me wonder, what kind of, it's an issue anyways. So those are just two tiny little concerns, which are nothing. Their biographies, both of them are qualified to do the job. They have extensive biographies. She's got, seems like, a lot more real-world experience. She's a lawyer, so she hasn't been a judge. So I am erring on her side. I've also, she's commented several times on my post. I've asked her questions, and she's responded to them. So that makes me, very happy. I'm very excited about that. She's like, you know what I mean? So, whereas he doesn't have a website, so how do you contact him? He, messaged me on Facebook. So he does have a Facebook account, so you can go to his private Facebook account. But, yeah, those are the policies of Jacqueline Caldwell.